Welcome back to B2B Inspired, the podcast where we sit down with the people shaping New Zealand's B2B community. I'm Henrik Arlund, CEO and co-founder of BlueOcean, the B2B agency. Today, we're talking about an industry that touches almost all parts of this economy, and one that has a genuinely hard time at the moment: construction. And my guest on the show today is PJ Morris. PJ has spent more than 20 years in the construction industry, most recently as Head of Customer Experience and Marketing at Fletcher Building's Heavy Building Materials Division. Having spent over 20 years in the industry, she knows it inside out and has seen it from all sides of the value chain. That's a rare vantage point, and one that matters for this conversation. Because the value chain PJ knows inside out is quietly changing shape. Who designs, who specifies, and who actually makes the product decision. And what she'll argue today is that a tough market is exactly the moment strategic marketing stops being a nice to have and becomes a must have. PJ.
Hello.
Welcome back to B2B Inspired.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
So, what do you see in the market? What's changing?
The construction market is in a really tough time. It's at the bottom of the cycle. It's, traditionally a very cyclical market anyway, and that's been compounded by a really tough economy in New Zealand that seems to be going for a long time, a government that has pulled back quite a bit on infrastructure spend as well, and so that's hit all your main contractors, and a really declining residential market. So you're seeing decline in all kind of three pillars of construction across commercial, infrastructure and residential, and that just seems to be going for a long time. And then you get these added elements that just make it tougher. The fuel crisis that's come out of the war in Iran that just, again, adds a lot of cost to building, and we're seeing that kind of flow through and projects be delayed, which just really means there's a slowdown in work out there. At the same time, the government has opened up the material side of the construction industry to more products coming in from overseas, and that brings more competition into the market. And so what does that mean for you if you're a manufacturer? It means the world is changing.
So less demand, doom and gloom, and more competition.
Yeah, and construction's been there before. As I said, it's very cyclical. You go through the boom and the bust of the construction market. So, it goes down, it comes up again. COVID was a real boom for the construction industry, and it's definitely come off of that high, and that less stuff is happening out there. There's less work in progress. It's taking longer for projects to come to fruition. And seeing when those green shoots are going to come is where I think there's not much consensus about what's going to happen. Traditionally in the past, when construction, residential and commercial is down, infrastructure normally comes back up, and that hasn't happened this time round. The government really pulled in their purse strings after COVID, so you haven't seen that traditional government spend to help carry the industry through the downturn, which just makes for, a tougher time out there where you've got to really think about how you're going to succeed.
So in my intro, I mentioned that there's some changes in the value chain.
Yep.
So what's that change? What do you see is happening?
Certain aspects of the commercial side of the market, we're seeing a real shift to more design and build type projects. So traditionally, you have an asset owner or someone who wants to build something or a commercial building. They'll go to an architect and an engineer, often known as a specifier, get that building designed, they'll do all of that, and then they'll put it out to tender to a contractor. We're starting to see a shift in certain types of building, particularly that warehousing space, where they'll now go to a design and build contract, which basically means they hire the main contractor, and the main contractor subcontracts out the design to either an architect, or they have an architect in-house who does that for them. That gives that main contractor and builder a lot more control over the design, and therefore a lot more control on the cost. And that can help speed up build, but it is quite a shift in that traditionally it was a rather small part of New Zealand market, and we're definitely seeing that growing a lot more.
So if you're a product supplier within construction. What does that mean? So before you were aiming to become specified, and now you're moving towards having a new customer segment that you need to deal with?
Yeah. And you're still always aiming to be specified. It's just who you need to talk to about that specification is changing. And so it's been really clear about within those customer segments, who are the target markets you need to be engaging with. Primarily before you might have engaged directly with large architect firms or even small architect firms directly, and then with your subcontractor who installs your product. Now with design and builds, you're potentially also having to engage with the main contractor's in-house staff. So it's a different kind of go-to-market. These people are in different spaces. They have a different value proposition. So as a product manufacturer, have you thought about what it is that you need to say to them, and have you built those relationships? The construction industry is an industry built on relationships. It's all about who you know. And so making sure that you know the right people in these organizations is going to be really material to how you succeed as a product manufacturer, particularly if you do products that go a lot into that warehousing space that's moving into a lot more of that design and build.
So are you saying they haven't really thought about doing marketing prior? They've just been leveraging off relationships?
It is very much a sales-based industry that build around those relationships that salespeople have. And in a boom market, you're fine in that space. You can really work through those relationships. You can build them. In a lower market, those relationships are still 100% really, really important. But you've got to now be thinking about, actually, I might need to build a relationship with somebody I've never had one before. And that's where marketing kind of becomes even more important around strategically. Where are you playing? How are you going to win? What is the right value proposition that you're delivering to that new influencer in that buying group? Making sure you can clearly articulate that, and that your messaging aligns with what your salespeople are out there saying.
So just talk to me a little bit about what the industry is known for communicating. It's obviously construction.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that historically they've gone much beyond the functional communications?
No, it's a very rational-based industry. It talks a lot about product performance, how it meets building code. It very much relies on that rational messaging. If this product does this, it'll achieve this. And when you're in a very competitive market, that's table stakes. Your product has to meet building code. It has to meet the needs of the specifier, the installer. Where you can then start to communicate added value that becomes really important is again looking at those target markets and what that value is for those different people that influence the buying chain. So rational, table stakes, have to do it. Then you need to think about actually what is it that you're trying to achieve as that person that you're talking to. So from an architect's perspective or a specifier, they might have 3,000 products that they have to specify into a design. That's a lot of complexity. It's a lot of product knowledge they have to have. They are creatures of habit. They'll do the same product over and over again because then I don't have to think about it as a specifier. So if you're wanting them to change behaviour, you really have to think about what might drive them to think differently. For example, we worked on a project with Fletcher's where we'd been talking for about 5 years about the real rationale of why this product was great and it wasn't moving the needle. And we went back out and spoke to the architect and just found this really key insight that actually what really mattered to them was not having to compromise their design. They were really artistic, and to meet this performance-based criteria right now, they were having to change the way they designed the building and make compromises on their vision. And actually what we did was just pivot the message to say, you can achieve that compliance with this product without having to compromise that design. And that drove like a 40% uplift year on year in sales, because we went and actually said that the rationale didn't matter to them as much as going, my core driver is I don't want to have to change my design. Now, for your subcontractor or your transactional, it might be about communicating the operational efficiencies that you can drive or the value engineering that you can add to them that'll save them time on site or installation quicker so they can still charge the client the same amount but get off-site and onto the next job faster. So really understanding what is the value you can add that'll drive commercial outcomes for your client can then therefore help you communicate a different message through those layers of value chain.
So in today's market, the rational, functional needs of the product is not enough to communicate.
No.
and you have to go back to the old-fashioned, understand your customer,
Yes.
the value they're seeking, their needs and wants.
Yep.
And the construction industry, historically, have they been good at that?
Oh, mix. There are people that do it really well, and there are people who really rely on that functional, rational benefit and the relationships that they've had. I think one thing the construction industry does really well is sales relationships. They are exceptional at building those relationships, but you need to make sure you're laddering those relationships all the way through an organisation and talking to the value of all those layers that are involved in that value chain. So that's the main contractor, the subcontractor, potentially a merchant if that's who they're purchasing through. So the likes of your Bunnings, Mitre 10s, placemakers, your specifier, your building consent. So you really got to understand the map of who influences the decision for your product category, where the rational buyers sit and how you communicate that to them, but also where those emotional or more needs-based triggers need to happen, and communicate that in a creative way. And I think there's a real opportunity to be more creative to cut through, because so many of the products within construction are commodity-based products. They are all the same in many ways. So you've got to find different ways to stand out and be that preferred choice or preferred supplier.
Yeah, so you need to find reasons for your product to be chosen and not be replaced as well. Because what happens if you miss anyone within that value chain?
You have the chance of having your spec flipped out. So you can be specified, and then if you miss that value chain and don't connect those dots all the way through, they can at some point swap you out for a different supplier of a similar product. And then you've done all this work up front that you're losing down the bottom. And there's, some real opportunity to make sure that you're connecting that internally through your organisation, and making sure that your specification sales team, your marketing team, your sales team and your operations team are all working really closely to improve that customer experience and make sure you hold that spec the whole way through. And because that can be such a long period of time from when an asset owner starts thinking about building a building and you start having conversations with an asset owner, to the specification to the actual build can be anything from 3 months to 5 years. It's a really long journey to make sure you hold spec the whole way through, because things will change, including how much your product costs, the operations of doing it, what's actually going to be delivered. So it is really, really important to what I like to call a zipper approach to a project, and make sure you are connecting at all those right levels of the value chain.
So that's ensuring you're holding, and there's the risk of you being replaced.
Yep.
But it must also create the opportunity that you could come in and replace someone else who's done all the hard work in being specified and sitting there 2, 3, 4 years, and then you come in
and
on the closing.
Yeah, there is that opportunity, and that is getting harder to do, to flip spec. And that depends on your product category. There are certain product categories that are always brand specified, and that means your brand's appearing on the plans, and there are more product categories that are more, I guess, specified based on the properties of the product, be that strength or functionality. Those ones are easier to flip spec on because they're not listing a brand. To flip spec, you have to go back through building consent potentially, so there is cost added to it. So if you're going to go out and flip spec, you really have to understand the value that you can bring to a business to make it worthwhile for them to go back through that process again. And as the government starts to put in place the changes to how risk is assigned within a building and who owns the liability of that, and the move to proportional liability on a build, you will see that risk adversity, I think, come up quite a bit, because all of a sudden council isn't sitting there to hold the pot at the end if something goes wrong. That liability is going to be reassigned over time to multiple people in that value chain, specifiers, building owners, builders, and working out as they implement this how that liability sits. I think will make people want to stay with trusted brands. So building up that trust now is going to be vital to making sure that you can operate in a risk adverse market.
So do I understand you right in saying that you see going forward it'll be harder to change the specs because there's higher risk involved in that, and most people will then stay with what's specified?
That's my prediction for the market. I mean, it is just what I think will happen, but it really will depend where they end up, I think, with insurance behind proportional liability as the government implements it. But I do think you'll see some risk adversity. What that also does from a looking forward point of view is go, what's that going to mean for new product development or bringing new products in from overseas? Because that willingness to try something new when you hold the risk could potentially be a lot less. So really having to think very strategically about how you develop new products, how you introduce them to the New Zealand market, how you test them, to give the confidence to those people that they can, specify it or build with it, and it will meet the requirements of the New Zealand building code, and also, just the way we build. It's an industry that's pretty slow to change generally anyway, so bringing in new products has never been easy, but I think it is going to get a little trickier.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not a good trend for New Zealand then.
Yeah, I think it'll just be different, and I think there is still huge opportunity to bring in new products. You're just going to have to do it very, very strategically, and I would like to think that involves being in a real partnership mode with your customers to launch those new products. So trialing products with customers, getting them involved in the development of them, working really closely with different stakeholders in that value chain to get their input into the development of new products will help seed that trust much earlier. And so I think that co-creation with customers and the value chain will help you bring new products to market.
I like your thinking for the separate approach with the value chain, and the multiple different buyer groups and understanding all of them and different wants and needs throughout that. But just talk to me a little bit about the other side. So we always have the conflict or dilemma or not working together between sales and marketing.
Yep.
So within construction, how do you see that? Is that an industry that's good at coordinating messaging and outreach between marketing and sales?
I think there's real opportunity in this industry for that to work a little bit better. Traditionally, these are sales-led organisations or operational-led organisations. Marketing's often seen as a sales support function rather than a strategic business driver. And I think the opportunity for sales and marketing to get closer together will always bring added value for the business, and to really think about the role that marketing and brand particularly can play in building that layer of trust and that long-term future pipeline. Sales are really good at activating in the short term, and so marketing can play a role in thinking, actually, this is what we're doing and communicating to make sure that everybody in that value chain or everybody in the industry that influences somebody else in the industry knows my brand, has trust with my brand, feels comfortable with that brand being chosen, and then allowing that messaging to flow down to that more rational messaging of the sales team.
So a lot of changes in New Zealand, in the landscape, possibly some changes coming from the governments, building codes, risk, less demand, all doom and gloom. What can I do if I'm a building product supplier Monday morning? Where should I start?
I think it's really good to start by thinking strategically. So take a pause and map your market. So be really clear about what segments you want to play in, where you think there is growth happening. Is that commercial, residential, infrastructure for your product category? And within that, say commercial, what areas of commercial is it? Is it high-end builds? Is it warehousing? Is it Ministry of Education work? So being clear about where you want to target. And then within that segment, doing a power map of that market. So here's all the people involved in it, and here's how they're interconnected and influence each other. And here's how much of an influence they have on that purchase decision. Because that can help you clarify who should I be talking to. Then you can go out and work, what is the value proposition for each of those target markets? Have I got that clear? Am I communicating with them? Are our sales team out there talking to the right people? Do we have relationships with everybody in this market? And are we investing our money in the right place? You know, we're out here talking to these guys. Actually, when I map the market, these guys have a whole bunch of influence, and I need to make sure I'm talking and communicating with them. And that allows you to just think really carefully, where can we play and how are we going to win in there? And once that's clear, get together as a team and talk about it and make sure you're aligned between marketing, sales, operations, and kind of go, this is what we see happening out there. Are we all aligned as a team that we're going after the same thing? Do we think we can sell the same message? And then it's a case of putting that plan into action, of going, great, okay, we've got that. This is where we need to be. This is how we're going to start rolling that out. But I think it's taking that time to stop. It's really easy to be busy and to be busy doing some really good tactical things, but actually taking that time to stop and check, are we being strategic about it? And are we really clear where there is opportunity? Have we thought about, particularly now, the rural market? We all know that Fonterra have just sold off their brand's business to Lactalis and paid out farmers. So that means potentially, fuel costs aside, that farmers will have money that they'll want to invest back into the infrastructure of their farms. So that might be new shed building, that might be water movement on the farm and pipes and drainage. So as a product supplier, have I got a really clear offer for everybody in that rural market? Do I understand who the contractors are and the players in there, how that market works, and actually kind of going, is that an opportunity for me or not an opportunity for me? And being really targeted about where you're going to play. So rather than trying to hit everything, go, these ones are where we can win and where we should play.
That's very solid advice. And if you decide then where you want to play, who your buying group are, what's the next step then? What do you need to consider when you start communicating?
Having a really clear communications framework about what you're doing. Here's the value we bring as a brand. Here's the different target markets, the jobs to be done for each of them. What is the need of each person in that target market? The value you bring to them and what that proposition is. And then how are you going to reach them? What do you want them to do? So there's a really clear call to action on it. And making sure that there is alignment through the line and all that messaging. So there is some clear thread that connects you, be it your brand message, the product message, and so that you are going through that chain and that everyone there knows that it's you, and that you're clearly articulating why you can help them at each stage. And then you're just out there starting to build those relationships and go, cool, I need a relationship with this person. Great. Who am I going to target? Who do I need to actually know in that business and get in front of?
Well, once you have that, it sounds so much easier. Like, I know I need to talk to these people and this is what I need to say. Yeah. This is effectively equipping the salespeople so they become a lot more efficient instead of just randomly reaching out.
Yeah, it is about that, and it's about making sure that you've got people talking to people who aren't transactional customers. So much of what happens within the construction industry, because things are specified, is about making sure that the people involved in the purchase decision, which might be from a vast different array of customers, know who you are, know they can trust your brand and feel comfortable with those product choices. So it is about kind of going, if our sales team are dealing with our transactional customers who are buying from us, and the operations is ensuring that their needs are met, have we got the right people communicating with the main contractor or with the specifier or with the merchant to help enable that sale? And do those people have the information they need, and are they talking the same story or that connecting thread as our transactional salespeople? Are we leveraging our merchants and our merchant channel to help us tell that? So many builders and subcontractors will buy through a merchant for loyalty, rewards, ease of access. So, you know, is our merchant channel able to sell on our behalf? Are we well positioned in the store? Can they find our brand? Do they know why? You'll often find builders are what we call merchant loyal over product loyal. They will have a preferred merchant. They will shop at that merchant and they trust that merchant to stock products that are trusted and well used. So while they might have a brand they like, they're not going to drive past their preferred merchant to go to another merchant to purchase it. So you've got to make sure you're in the right location and right point of purchase, that your brand shows up and you're easy to find, you're in the right part of the store. There's a lot to think about, and having that clearly mapped, you can then kind of put together a plan of where do we attack first and how do we get there to make sure.
It sounds like a very complicated value chain mapping. Lots of people, distribution, buyers, influencers, and just the physical of where people are and who they talk to, relationship built.
It's a real complex industry from that reason. There's a lot of players in it. There's a lot of different routes to market in there. And as a product supplier, you might have direct customers, you might have merchant customers, you might have main contractors who do the purchase and then hire the subbies. You might have subbies who purchase directly. So having a really clear map of how your customers purchase and your customer journey can really help work out where you can stand out from your competitor so they pick you over the other guy.
Wow. Yeah, I'd love to see one of those maps fully mapped out for the whole industry.
I've never done one for the whole industry. I've done it for segments of the industry, and they're very complex.
Yeah, because I guess you're right. There, you can't just do one. It's you got commercial, you got residential,
and then within that you got product categories.
Yes.
You know, your roofing category and the way a roof is purchased and specified and designed is very, very different from something like concrete. And that depends on the application it's been used, what type of product it is an engineer involved or not involved. And so the map really is product category specific as well as, you know, different type of construction specific. You know, how you make a decision in residential is very, very different to commercial. And then again, that's very, very different from your interior wall linings to your roofing to your insulation.
And are there geographical differences as well? North Island versus the South Island?
There certainly is in terms of what happens in the market. Right now, I'd definitely say there's a tale of two markets, particularly in residential. Places like Central Otago are still growing from a residential point of view, and they're probably one of the only places in the country that are. So you're seeing a lot more activity happen in the South Island than you are in the North Island at the moment. You're seeing the South Island recover a bit quicker. It's not so much in how you go to market, and that's where regions can be quite complex, because as a specifier you might be based in Tauranga but working on a project in Wanaka. And so geographic targeting from a media perspective can be quite difficult because, again, that value chain is so complex, and that value chain isn't necessarily about location.
So looking across the construction as a whole, we talked about it a little bit before. Very rational, functional.
Yep.
A lot of them sounds the same.
Yep.
How should you approach that? What can you do to stand out?
I think there's a real opportunity to be creative, and so to think really carefully about what's your tone of voice. The construction industry is a bunch of really, for the most part, down-to-earth people. So you've got a real opportunity to be a bit cheeky, to be a bit funny, to stand out from the crowd and have a real point of view and a tone of voice. And I think if you can think really carefully about how you show up and how you bring personality to it, then you can start to stand out. And I think that's a great way to build on the relationships that your salespeople have, because generally salespeople have a lot of personality. They're out there selling, they're all about people and connecting and bringing those people to the forefront of your business and making sure that they are showing up in the way you advertise, the way you market, your tone of voice, and it's not too corporate and not all the same, can really help you stand out and can help you build those relationships so they're not just one-to-one with the salesperson, but with the entire business. And so I think if you look at how you can just be a bit different and then reuse those distinctive brand assets again and again and again, will help you just show up differently. I think there's real opportunity to not show product in everything that you do and actually look at how do you demonstrate you're solving a customer problem or a customer need. Going back to that example we used, if it's about design freedom for an architect, not having to compromise their design, they don't need to see your product to get that message. They need to associate your brand with that message. And there are interesting ways to do that can capture attention that aren't necessarily about showing the product.
So take the personalities of your salespeople,
Yeah.
bring them up into the marketing message, the tone of voice, make them memorable, distinctive, stand out, a bit cheeky perhaps.
Yeah, a bit cheeky.
And then look at the outcome that a product deliver instead of just the basics of what it is and what it does.
Yeah, and I think if you can focus on those things, then you've got a real chance to be a bit different. And I'd say that is try new things. It's a market that are really open to trying. Most tradies particularly, they're real down-to-earth blokes. They'll tell you if it's not working straight away. You will get feedback. You will know. But just think about what channels they're in and how you come to life in those places, you know. Is it about how you're on TikTok or how you're on Instagram, and actually start to think about, in the world of construction B2B, it's not just about the likes of LinkedIn or more professional networks. It's about how do you show up in the places where they are, and that might be the side of the sports field with banner advertising rather than a blog post or a website. You know, your customers are mainly on site every day. They're not sitting at computers. So where's the right place to show up in a way that's going to make them stop and look?
Sounds good. And lastly, PJ, welcome to BlueOcean. You have joined our team here, BlueOcean, the B2B agency.
Yes, I have.
So if anyone got any needs for marketing, strategic marketing within construction,
yeah, more than happy to help and have a conversation. I mean, I'll talk about construction and marketing all day, every day, so it's my happy place.
Yeah, I loved our briefing session yesterday, which was almost a whole podcast, just as a introduction conversation. Wealth of knowledge. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming here today and sharing with us.
No,
it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Like I said, I'm excited to join the team at BlueOcean and help other construction businesses grow.
Thank you.